Get down Ethan Gaieski versus Hunter Church. Gaieski does not look thrilled about his position.
I'm going to go get him a coffee after this round. Wake up, dude. Let's start the show.
Getting a look at some hands here as Hunter Church is on the play. Breeding Pool tapped is where he will start. Gaieski, a Watery Grave tapped.
Do we have the decks on cardboard?
And go to turn 2 for Hunter Church. See if he has the Growth Spiral. There's Hinterland Harbor, and it's going to be Bonds of Flourishing, actually. So this one, not the most exciting card. Look at the top 3, looking for a permanent and gain 3 life.
Yeah, a lot of times just going to hit a land, but the times where you hit a Tamio or Wilderness Reclamation, or as you see here, a Search for Escanta, those are the ones that make the card really stand out. And even though you have a bunch of basically non-permanent spells in your deck, Bond of Flourishing, hitting those key cards is really important. And the 3 life buffer helps out a lot against the aggressive decks.
Yeah, Church at 23. Gaieski just has a Sulphur Falls on turn 2. No discard spell, no Thought Erasure will go Church's way, and he'll just play a Forest, play the Search for Escanta. No answer for Gaieski.
Now, the one card you may be looking at in Ethan Gaieski's hand, he has 2 copies of Bedeck Bedazzle in his deck. Bedeck, a lot like a Last Gasp or what's the Nameless Inversion, where it's a +3/-3, kills most small creatures. But the Bedazzle half, destroy a non-basic land for 6 mana. It's pretty expensive, but on a split card, that can have some really cool ramifications for the long game. Hunter Church transforming that Search for Escanta means that Ethan might have an answer for it, and in a control matchup via Reclamation, that's pretty important.
Yeah, so Gaieski shocked for a Blood Crypt to 18. We'll see what he had. Church plays a Blast Zone, Wilderness Reclamation, but it just resolves. Gaieski, no end-step action. We're just back his way, so now Church has 2 very powerful enchantments on the battlefield against a deck not known for being able to answer that permanent type.
Yeah, enchantments are notably really difficult for Gaieski to interact with. Needs a discard spell early enough to take that Wilderness Reclamation. Honestly, this matchup doesn't look very good for Ethan, and I'm curious to see how he's going to get out of this one. If Hunter Church can assemble a transform Search for Escanta with Wilderness Reclamation, no amount of discard in the world is going to save you.
Yeah, Gaieski's going to try to apply some pressure, though. Dragon Skull Summit into Nicol Bolas the Ravager. Church responds with a Chemister's Insight, but that one's going to resolve.
Yeah, so this discard hit from Gaieski on the Ravager, plus some pressure. Normally this would be pretty good, but not having a play on turns 1, 2, or 3 means this is likely a little bit too late.
Discard there off of the Nicol Bolas for Church is going to be the one of Callous Dismissal he has in his main deck. You don't really want to be bouncing Nicol Bolas. It's also pretty well set up already, as once again he's keeping the card he sees with the Search for Escanta.
Yeah, I mean, if he's discarding the Callous Dismissal here, even though Gaieski could just replay the Ravager and make you discard another card, in this juncture, you likely have a couple of dead cards floating around in your hand, or things that lose a lot of utility, stuff like Growth Spiral. And Callous Dismissal buys you time, and in this matchup, when you're ahead, all you need is just a little bit more time to really get things assembled here.
Pretty significant turn already for Church as Memorial to Genius into Tamio, Collector of Tales. He'll tick that one up. Looks like 4 cards he didn't name were revealed. We'll find out exactly what he did name. Yeah, Nexus of Fate.
Yeah, it looks like he's already got 1 Nexus of Fate / Plains in his hand. And just digging for more copies now that he has Tamio online.
And Tamio puts those cards in the graveyard, so that looks like 7 in the bin for that Search for Escanta.
Yeah, and that's one of the strengths of Tamio in this deck. Gaieski here look like he's going to have that removal spell for the Tamio. That's why he's shocked on turn 3, holding up the Bedevil in case Hunter's turn 4 play was that Tamio.
Yeah, so Bedevil takes down Tamio. Nicol Bolas will connect. Church down to 19. And Thought Erasure is the follow-up for Gaieski.
Yeah, and that's a really great sequence from Gaieski. Remembering the static effect of Tamio means your opponent can't make you discard. So having that there, a pretty heads-up play.
Hand was Growth Spiral, Nexus of Fate. That Nexus will be hit by the Thought Erasure. Looks like Gaieski's keeping the card on top off of that. And then Nexus will go ahead and shuffle back in for Church.
Might be land number 6, so he can actually cast the Bedazzle to knock off the Transformed Search for Escanta. It's going to be a pretty sweet one if it does.
Yeah, you want to answer that card fast, because Wilderness Reclamation plus Escanta the Sunken Rune is a very potent combination.
Yeah. Now here, Hunter Church has the ability to cast either Growth Spiral or Chemisters during the end step. My guess is he's just going to pitch Growth Spiral, cast Chemisters, and look for either another Wilderness Reclamation for that Search for Escanta or something else.
Looks like he's thinking about the growth spiral.
Yeah, I mean, might just heavily value land drops in this scenario. Just making sure that he ramps just a little bit more. The more mana you have, obviously, the better Wilderness Reclamation and Search for Azcanta become.
He does land on Chemist's Insight. He'll jumpstart that, discarding the spiral. Take a look with that Search for Azcanta. Going to give that one a think. He will keep it and transform into Azcanta the Sunken Rune.
Yeah, and this is the part that gets really boring. Because I think Hunter Church actually has a Nexus of Fate in hand that he found over the last turn cycle, and that combined with the Search for Azcanta means he's going to be able to take an extra turn, untap everything, activate Azcanta, and then get a full turn where he can basically do the same thing again if he finds another Nexus of Fate. But even if he doesn't, he's at 19. Gaieski doesn't have a lot of pressure going on, and it just looks pretty bad in general for Ethan.
Church had the 7th mana source, was another Blast Zone, and Nexus of Fate was fired off. Go into the untap phase with Wilderness Reclamation, get an activation with Azcanta the Sunken Rune before he goes to his bonus turn, finds a Chemist's Insight.
Yeah, and 1 mana short of being able to cast it, but not a big deal.
Yeah, plenty of mana now that he's taking this extra turn. Active Wilderness Reclamation. Here's a Forest. Find out he was able to find another Nexus of Fate. He's consulting the graveyard.
Yeah, if he has a land drop here, he can actually activate Azcanta, cast Nexus, and activate Azcanta again. But only if he has the land drop. But finds a Tamio here. That's a pretty good one to find, too.
Yeah, off of the main phase activation of Azcanta there. Here's the Tamio. That card makes it quite a bit easier to start finding your Nexus of Fates.
Yep, and now with 7 lands, if he hits the Nexus of Fate off the top of the Tamio, which he does, and that's going to do it. Gaieski picks him up. Game 1 over to Hunter Church.
Yeah, Nexus was found, and Gaieski's been here before. He was really far behind. Church was kind of spiraling out of control with extra turns, extra cards. Gaieski sees the writing on the wall, picks him up. Hunter Church up 1 game.
All right, we're going to go over the sideboards here in just a second, but if you want to take a look at the decks yourselves, check out that Cardboard Live extension, and that's going to be one thing we can do here while we're looking over the deck lists. For Hunter Church, I think it's going to be mostly just bring in some kind of counter spells like Negate. Maybe he wants some number of Crushing Canopy as a way to interact with an opposing Nicol Bolas the Ravager, because that card is pretty good when backed by a lot of disruption. Something he could go the route of siding into a more creature-dense plan, since he has none in the main deck. Go with like Carnage Tyrant, Biogenic Ooze, God Eternal Kefna, and Murmuring Mystic. All quite good in this particular matchup.
Yeah, Gaieski's going to clean things up. Some discard spells, some counter spells most likely. We'll see how everything lines up when we get those sideboard configurations locked in. We're talking about Standard this weekend, but remember, there is an upcoming set that's looking to impact Modern in a big way, Modern Horizons. You can pre-order that today over on go.starscitygames.com/MH1. Of course, MH Modern Horizons. Ships Friday, June 14th. That's actually way sooner than I thought it was.
Yeah, that's just around the corner. That's crazy. I know back when they first previewed a couple cards from Modern Horizons, they didn't want it to take away from the War of the Spark hype train that was obviously intense and awesome. But Modern Horizons, so far we only have a few confirmed cards, but the idea of Modern Horizons where you're able to print new cards or reprint older cards to go specifically into Modern play is just incredibly exciting to me.
Yeah. I'm always excited for the limited environments for sets like this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value in having a good draft format, especially when you get to pick up some of those really sweet new cards.
Yeah, likely to see some cool reprints for sure. Remember, there's no cards in that set that currently are Modern legal.
Right.
So it's a ton of reprints into Modern, some new cards into Modern. Really cool stuff.
Yeah, and whenever you inject like 200 plus cards specifically designed with Modern power level in mind, it's not something we've ever really seen before. And so I'm just genuinely curious how it's going to affect the format. 2 cards that we know for sure: the Sarah Planeswalker as well as Cabal Therapist. Cabal Therapist could fit into some of these sacrifice-oriented decks, and now that we actually have a card that a really good payoff for the sacrifice effect, and the 3-mana Minotaur from War of the Spark, whose name I can't remember.
I know the card, but I don't know the card name.
Okay, yeah, there it is. Step 1, just don't talk about the cards you don't know the name of, Todd. That's Easy mode. Come on, man. Anyway, I think Cabal Therapist could slide into there. The Planeswalker Sarah seems really cool too. We're just gonna have to wait and see all the cool things that come out of that.
Yeah, Cabal Therapist is a new, cool twist on an old, hard to say favorite. It doesn't feel good to be hit by a Cabal Therapy. I do like the adjustment in power level to try to make it more reasonable for Modern.
Sure. Attaching itself to a creature, though, is pretty interesting as well. It has Menace, too, so you could do some attacks with it if you want to turn on, like, Charter Course. There's some really weird stuff you can do with it, so I'm kind of curious myself to brew with it. But let's go over the sideboards here. We're going over a little bit of what Hunter Church could do. The creature package might be good. I think the negates are definitely coming in, but I don't really know what you side out. Like maybe the Blinks of an Eye and Callous Dismissal aren't that good. The Root Snares can come out too, and if you just replace those 7 cards with 3 negate and like 4 big creatures, maybe that's good enough.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So here's a question for Gaieski. He has those Spell Pierces, those Duresses. I think those are kind of a lock.
Yep.
How do you feel about trying to go aggressive? Maybe you go for Legion Warboss in a matchup like this.
Absolutely. Legion Warboss shines against decks where they don't really have spot removal or a lot of blockers. And in this matchup, you have both. I think Legion Warboss is the perfect threat for a lot of these control decks after sideboard because it's kind of a one-man army. You cast it on 3, you back it up with a couple of counter spells and removal spells, and your opponent is dead in just 3 or 4 short turns. So love that. Love the Duress and Spell Pierces, and the Thief of Sanity probably comes in as well.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Gaieski will be on the play of this game as Hunter Church did win the first, and Gaieski's going to keep a 6-card hand. Hunter Church is on 7, and we'll see where Gaieski starts. Looks like it's a tapped, white-bordered Steam Vents.
Love it. That is not a card that exists, but it has been altered as such, and you know what? It's a troll, but a good troll.
Tapped Breeding Tool for Church, and looks like is that Dimir Guildgate for Gaieski?
It is a Dimir Guildgate. He has 1 in his deck, which leads me to believe that he has worked on this mana base quite a bit, because Dimir Guildgate in a 3-color deck is not something you see every day.
Yeah, he has 4 Watery Grave, so this is his 5th blue-black land. That's definitely a deliberate choice. Growth Spiral for Hunter Church off of an island as a 2nd land, and Breeding Pool will enter tapped. So accelerating the mana a little bit. There we go Gaieski's way.
Yeah, Gaieski here wanted to hit a few more land drops. I'm not sure that he has another land in his hand. And he's kind of hesitant here on how he's going to play out this turn. Looks like he's going to go for a Thought Erasure with the option of casting Duress plus holding up Spell Pierce. So a cognizant choice here, and it might end up getting punished because there are 2 Tamios lurking over on Hunter Church's side. Yeah,
this is a gross hand. We see Growth Spiral, 2 Bonds of Flourishing, 2 Tamios, and a Blast Zone. Not a really Thought Erasable hand.
Yeah, I mean, it's really redundant, which is key. And Gaieski here, needing that land drop, chose to go with the Thought Erasure, but getting punished here pretty badly.
And it looks like Nicol Bolas Dragon God was surveilled away. So at least he won't have to draw that one, but Church is going to start applying some pressure here.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty surprised. It looked like he passed turn, but it was just a weird hand motion. I would actually like to see Hunter minus immediately on the Tamiyo to get back a 2nd Tamiyo, just because you don't want that Tamiyo to get blown up. If it does get blown up, your hand doesn't really look that good anymore.
Yeah, we'll see if it plays out that way, if Gaieski can get something going. For Church, he did choose to plus it. He missed looking for a Wilderness Reclamation.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to miss on Tamiyo most of the time. The key is that you're filling up the graveyard, you're flipping over relevant cards like Chemister's Insight, but the minus ability is really where the card starts to shine, and in this particular matchup, the static effect is actually quite good too. The Tamiyo keeps your opponent from being able to hit you with Thought Erasure and Duress, as well as even like something like the Eldest Reborn just like no longer works.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of upside there. Gaieski will miss the 3rd land drop once again. Search for his Kanta is what he'll play before passing. And we'll see if Church can start to really do some damage.
Well, it looks like Church actually found a Wilderness Reclamation. So here I think just going to be ticking up probably to dig for something like Nexus of Fate, but I wouldn't be surprised if he actually ticked down to get a land, because he doesn't have a land drop to play for turn, just that Wilderness Reclamation, and he's going to untap and still be able to play Chemister's Insight, but you really want to hit your land drops in this matchup.
He plussed looking for a Nexus, missed on that, and now he will deploy that the Reclamation he picked up, and then follow up with Chemister's Insight.
Yeah, Wilderness Reclamation here, just insanely powerful. Gaieski has very few ways to actually get it off the battlefield. Hunter Church in a commanding position here. And heads up play, main phase on the Chemister's Insight. There was a pause from Gaieski on turn 2 where he had an option to spell pierce a growth spiral, chose not to. And Hunter Church getting that Chemister's resolved while Gaieski was tapped out. Pretty huge play from him, I think.
Yeah, definitely good sequencing. As we go back Gaieski's way, he found the third land. He keeps that with a search. It's a Blood Crypt. He'll shock for it. The Elder spell takes care of Tamio, but he is still against that Wilderness Reclamation, which is going to be a problem.
Yeah, and Hunter Church with 2 Chemisters inside the yard, 2 Bonds of Flourishing in hand. Looks like he's got, it's not wrapped up by any means. He's still a little short on mana, but under no pressure from Gaieski, so he's got a lot of time.
Search for his Kanta of his own for Hunter Church, and he's got a stacked graveyard, so he's going to transform that right away here.
Yeah, so passing turn, but not really passing the turn. Maybe a misstep from Hunter Church, missing the Wilderness Reclamation trigger.
And it looks like the lands are not untapped. Looks like there's some back and forth conversation about whether they get to. Conclusion seems to be no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty confident Hunter just missed it because when Gaieski untapped his lands, there was like a bit of back and forth. And, of course, in competitive play, you can miss your triggers.
Gaieski will trigger Search for his Kanta. Puts a swamp in the graveyard, so he's got some stuff to do with 3 mana at this point.
Right, and now that he has the Tommy off the battlefield, it actually turns on some of the discard spells he might have in his hand. That Duress, a key card here potentially.
It looks like the pickup after putting the swamp in the graveyard was a Sulfur Falls as well. Just to keep making some mana. He'll start with that Duress. Tap in the black mana here. There's the Duress. He still knows about 2 Bonds of Flourishing and a Growth Spiral, hoping to find something better than that.
Yeah, Hunter here looks like he might be going for a negate, and this is probably going to get... Oh, I thought I was going to get hit with a Spell Pierce.
Yeah, and I guess Gaieski's just going to let that negate go. We'll go back Church's way after Gaieski plays that Sulfur Falls. Going to take a look with his Search for his Kanta. He'll put a forest in the graveyard. He already gets the land as the Search does transform into his Kanta, the Sunken Ruin.
You want to hear something really funny that I heard the other day about these transform lands from Ixalan?
What's that?
If someone casts Dispersal, the back half of Discovery Dispersal, and your opponent's only permanent in play that's not a land, that is a land, is Escanta the Sunken Ruin, it has a converted mana cost of 2. And Discovery Dispersal does not... maybe it says non-land.
It does say non-land. You just don't pick anything up if you have another 2. I thought you were going there.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So Church is going to spend his turn. He's going to fire off those 2 Bonds of Flourishing.
Yes.
Goes up to 26. Found a Tamio off the first one. Didn't catch the second find.
I was too busy annoying you with a really bad story.
I was distracted by my colleague.
I'm going to float a mana here off the Escanta the Sunken Ruin, looking for a land. Doesn't have it, so can still activate the Escanta, though, so not a huge deal. And here we're seeing basically both players with roughly equal total resources, but Hunter Church having just a ton more mana thanks to that Wilderness Reclamation. Ethan, not really a good way to get it off the battlefield.
Right, well, now we're going to get a look at that hand, as Gaieski is going to use a Thought Erasure here. So we see that Tamio. We see another Wilderness Reclamation. I believe an extra Search for Escanta is the transform card there.
Yep.
Chemister's Insight and a Growth Spiral.
Yeah, Hunter here, in my opinion, should probably just cast Chemister's Insight because he needs to find lands to be able to really take a stranglehold on this game.
Gaieski takes out that additional copy of Wilderness Reclamation, and that makes a lot of sense. There's already an Escanta the Sunken Ruin on the battlefield. That kind of stuff really snowballs.
Right. The Tamio is potentially more dangerous, but Gaieski has more answers to Tamio than he does Wilderness Reclamation in his deck.
Gaieski is surveilling a Bedevil to the graveyard, so he's already at the ready to transform his Search for Escanta. Church is going to fire off Chemister's Insight from the graveyard, jumpstarting that on end step, discarded that additional Search for Escanta. We go back his way. He found a forest, play that as his land for turn. Couple options. We already know that there's a Tamio in hand. Could go ahead and deploy that.
Yeah, and has the mana to pay for a Spell Pierce, which is key, so Gaieski's going to have another counterspell here to deal with it.
Yeah, Tamio is going to be the play.
And again, I would like to see more minuses on these Tamios in the face of cards like Bedevil and other Planeswalker removal. It makes a lot more sense to give yourself essentially like a backup Tameo in hand in case the one dies, but also could just go for something like Carnage Tyrant, which he milled over earlier, God Eternal Kefna, which he milled over earlier.
Yeah, he's kind of pushing those threats to the front. We do see a minus. He will pick up God Eternal Kefnet. You guarantee a card that way, and it is a doozy.
Yeah, God Eternal Kefnet just almost impossible for this Grixis control deck to really deal with. And Gaieski, perhaps 20 turns too late. Just casting Spell Pierce on a Growth Spiral. Maybe should have done that one on turn 2.
Yeah, the turn 2 Growth Spiral probably a little bit better than this turn 12 one.
Yeah, things just kind of cascaded out of control. Gaieski missing a land drop, ultimately just falling way too far behind when Hunter Church presented him with basically 2 Tamios in the face of a Thought Erasure.
Gaieski's going to put a Blood Crypt into the graveyard with his Search for Azcanta, transform that into the Sunken Ruin. Tap of 4 mana, there's Nicol Bolas the Ravager.
Yeah, and it doesn't do anything because of the static ability on Tameo, Collector of Tales. So no discard here from Hunter Church.
Yeah, just a 4/4 flyer.
Yeah, and that's not so bad. He's only, 2 mana away from being able to transform into a real Planeswalker, but Hunter Church finds a Nexus of Fate. Gaieski taps out, had enough. I don't blame him, and thank him, honestly.
A lot of respect for that concession.
I don't think people concede quickly enough.